3 Catwomen?
Is that so bad?
These videos are not for children. If you're a children, then piss off.
Hey there, it's me, your least favorite Batman fan, the Infuso. And do you remember the old 1960s Batman show? Well, that show didn't seem to think that you'd remember who was on that show, because it had several very big recasts throughout its run. In just 3 seasons and 120 episodes, the show saw some of its most memorable rogues recast, and at times even downright replaced. This wasn't just a once or twice thing either. Much like the villains in said show, this was reoccurring. And that's why today, we're here to talk about many recasts of Batman 66. Nowadays, a lot of fans consider the Joker to be Batman's greatest foe. And while Cesar Romero did a terrific job of portraying the Clown Prince of Crime, painted mustache and all, he was never really the big bad of the show. Here, the Caped Crusader's greatest nemesis was none other than the Riddler, which is in no short part due to the brilliant performance by the giddy and giggling Frank Gorshin. This version of the character had the intellectual prowess that later incarnations of the character would become famous for, but it was juxtaposed with his campy comedic nature. People who were even slightly familiar with the show would be able to pick this baddie out of a lineup, no problem. So that's why it's beyond confusing to me when I was re-watching this classic series, when the Riddler showed up not being played by his original actor, and surprisingly instead being portrayed by Gomez Addams actor John Astin. His performance was actually pretty good, and I think that he portrayed the character very well, but Gorshin left behind green shoes that were just a little bit too big to fill, which is probably why John Astin would only play the role once in one singular episode, as Gorshin couldn't come to contract negotiations with the studio. There were also other episodes in which the man in question was supposed to star, but those in charge instead opted to replace him with a brand new villain to the series, the Puzzler, which was a character that actually originated in Superman comics. Of course, this would change over time, and Gorshin returned to the role for the following season, the movie, and a few times after in other Batman-related projects. Interestingly enough, though, John Astin wouldn't be the only actor from the Addams family to make an appearance on the series. Both his former on-screen wife and butler would also make pretty memorable appearances during its run. In a similar situation to the one just mentioned, Batman's love interest, who had more of a love and interest in thievery, Catwoman, would be recast not once, but twice. Initially being played to perfection. I'm sorry, I wrote down that I was supposed to purr with that, but at the last minute I got self-respect, so I'm sorry. Initially being played to perfection by Julie Newmar, who really brought the comic book character to life. The show depicted the character as not just being a bad guy, but also in addition being a bad person. This is by far one of the most blatantly evil interpretations of Catwoman, because she wasn't just looking to steal, she also wanted to hurt those she came across. This Catwoman had a fondness for overall villainy, and it wasn't enough to just look out for herself, she also wanted to cause damage to everyone else. Although she did, however, still harbor her crush on the not-so-Dark Knight. Much like Gorshin, she was iconic as this character, with her popularity only increasing over time. In Season 2 of the series, she appeared in more episodes than any other villain in any other season, showing up not once, not twice, and not even 3 times, but 10, appearing in 10 episodes of Season 2. For comparison's sake, the Riddler appears in all of 12 episodes throughout the entire series run. Unfortunately, for a time being, her time in the role would end there, as she would then be replaced by Lee Merriweather in the movie based on the show. But if I'm being real with y'all, I kinda didn't even notice the difference. I legitimately did not know that this was a different actress until years and years and years later. It's only within the last decade that I figured that out. They both look so similar and play the part so alike that these two versions of the character are practically identical, a fact that the animated movies would later parody. Interestingly enough, the actress actually previously played a role on the show prior to this recasting. And even more interesting, the role would once again be recast in the 3rd season of the show, this time with Eartha Kitt stepping in. And this wasn't depicted as being some separate Catwoman, as her interactions with Batman would dictate that this is a continuation of their previous tumultuous relationship. Though unlike her predecessors, this version of the character is quite distinct. There are lingering elements of the previous two women's time in the role within this performance, but it doesn't feel like she's just redoing what they did. Because Eartha really put in effort to make this character her own, and I think that she undoubtedly succeeded. I gotta say, I think all of these performances are just fantastic. Not a bad one amongst the three. Each woman properly portrayed the character. But I think I personally favor Eartha Kitt's time in the role the most. She just sounds so effortlessly menacing. And let's be honest, that woman could fill out a catsuit. She's my personal favorite of the three, and I really wish that we got a little bit more time with her as the cat thief. But regardless, I will continue to cherish the 3 episodes she stepped in for. The only real question here is, how did Catwoman very obviously change her race? The answer to which is, I don't really know. I guess we'll just have to ask Harvey Dent from the Burton Schumacher Batman movies. And lastly for this video is the curious case of Mr. Freeze, who is significantly different from the villain with a frozen heart of gold that we've all come to know and love. Keep in mind that this was before he was given his tragic backstory, and even before the character was named Victor Freeze. Here he is Dr. Art Chivel, a criminal scientist, because this was the 60s, and this was the 1960s Batman show. And much like Catwoman, the part was also portrayed by 3 separate actors. And also like Catwoman, the sudden change in appearance would never once be explained. But it should be noted that the character looked noticeably different almost every time he appeared on camera. His first appearance on the show saw him look like a cheap monster from a movie made in the 1950s. He's got a vague astronaut aesthetic to him. And the villain was portrayed by actor George Sanders. In his 2 appearances on the show, he was mostly hidden behind a fishbowl. Sanders is actually probably most famous for playing a different villain, which required a fair amount of villainy, as he's actually the voice of Shere Khan from The Jungle Book. The following season, he'd be replaced by a man who holds the distinction of being the least liked guest star of the entire series. Apparently the most hated, at least behind the scenes, was actor Otto Preminger, who didn't do a whole lot to make a whole lot of friends during his brief time on set, with both Batman and Alfred actors publicly making notes of his alleged crappy etiquette. Though ironically, aesthetically speaking at least, I think he may be my favorite version of the character in the show. But then again, that's probably because he's the closest to the Mr. Freeze that I grew up with. I also really enjoyed his performance and wholeheartedly bought into his time as the villain. And it's actually this version of the character that is used in the Batman 66 follow-up comics. Anyway, it's probably because of how he rubbed the rest of the cast that this role would be hilariously recast mid-season, with Eli Wallach taking over the role, who ironically, aesthetically speaking, is my least favorite version of the character. Though I will say he puts in a good performance here as well, and it's actually this version of the character that cameos in the later animated films. It's hard for me to really remember which one of these I prefer. In my head it's Otto, but that's not really set nice, because it's been a while since I've sat down and fully watched the show. And if I'm being honest, Mr. Freeze just didn't have the presence in the series that a lot of other villains did. I really don't have a lot of distinct memories of Mr. Freeze in Batman 66. So I guess I may have to rewatch the series to figure it out. And if you'd like to see me cover that series here on this channel, season by season, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying, "Holy haberdashery!" And before I go, I want to thank YouTube commenter Spitfire the Dragon for the accidental idea he gave me to make this video. Without you, this probably wouldn't happen. And more importantly, I want to thank all of y'all for watching. With all that being said, I was your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso, and I hope to see you in the next one.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.